What was the single biggest turning point in our evolution? It's a big question. You could ask 10 different scientists and get 10 different answers, and none of them would be wrong. Not really. Some would say it was the moment we stood up. Walking on two legs, bipedalism changed everything. It freed our hands. You can't make a tool or carry a child if you're walking on your knuckles. Or standing up gave us a new perspective. It let us see over the tall grass of the savannah. It was a huge deal, no doubt about it. Others might point to the first stone tool. The moment one of our ancestors, maybe a Homo habilis, picked up one rock and deliberately struck another, creating a sharp edge. That sharp edge was a key. It unlocked a world of food that was off limits before. It let us butcher carcasses, scrape meat from bone, and crack open skulls for the nutrient-rich marrow inside. Tools were an extension of our bodies. They made us stronger, sharper, more capable than our biology allowed. A profound change. And then there's language, the ability to communicate complex, abstract ideas. Not just danger, like a monkey's shriek, but be careful of the lion we saw by the river yesterday. The language allows for planning, for teaching, for culture. It lets us build a shared reality, a web of stories and myths that bind a tribe together. It's arguably what makes us truly human. How could anything be more important than that? These are all giants: bipedalism, tools, language. They are the three main pillars of human evolution. But they might not be the turning point. They might be the consequences of it. They are branches on the tree, not the seed from which it grew. If we have to pick one single thing, one event that lit the fuse for everything that followed, it was the moment we tamed fire. It sounds almost too simple, too primitive. Fire is just a chemical reaction. But the control of fire was not just another tool. It was something different entirely. It was the moment we captured a piece of the sun and brought it down to earth. It was the first time we mastered a fundamental force of nature, and in doing so, we didn't just change how we lived. We changed what we were. We started the process of remaking ourselves from the inside out. To understand why, we have to go back. We have to imagine a world without it. A world that was our reality for millions of years. Life for an early hominin, say a Homo erectus living a million years ago, was defined by the sun. And daylight was everything. It was the time for gathering, hunting, moving. It was the time of relative safety. But the sun sets, and when it did, the world shrank to the size of your small, terrified group. The night belonged to the things that hunted us. The cave lions, the saber-toothed cats, the giant hyenas. Our ancestors had decent eyesight, but it was no match for the nocturnal predators. The darkness was a wall, an impassable boundary filled with teeth. Sleep would have been fitful, dangerous. One ear always open for the sound of a twig snapping. The cold was another enemy. Without fur, we are poorly adapted to low temperatures. A cold night could be a death sentence, especially for the young or the old. Our geographic range was limited by the climate. We were creatures of the warm parts of the world. And then there was food. Our diet was a constant grinding challenge. We foraged for plants, roots, tubers. We scavenged kills from other animals. Maybe we hunted small game. But everything we ate raw. Try chewing a raw potato or a tough, sinewy piece of uncooked meat. It takes an incredible amount of time and energy. Our ancestors would have spent hours every day just chewing. Their teeth and jaws were massive compared to ours for this very reason. They had to be. Digesting that raw food was also a huge energy drain. The human gut is a metabolically expensive organ. It takes a lot of calories just to run it. A diet of tough raw food requires a long and complex digestive tract to break it all down and extract the nutrients. This was the biological box we were in. Our energy budget was tight. We spent a huge portion of our day finding food, another huge portion chewing it, and a huge portion digesting it. The brain is the most energy-hungry organ of all. A bigger brain is a luxury. You can't afford a big brain if all your energy is going to your jaw muscles and your intestines. There was a ceiling on our intelligence, imposed by the simple, brutal economics of raw food. We were clever apes, yes, but we were still just apes, trapped by the limits of our biology. Then, somewhere, somehow, that changed. It probably wasn't a single Uyeka moment. It was a long, slow dance with a dangerous new partner. It likely started with natural fires. A lightning strike sets a patch of savanna ablaze. Our ancestors, like many animals, would have been terrified, and they would have run. But they were also intelligent and curious, and after the fire passed, they would have returned. They would have found something new. Roasted animals, cooked tubers in the scorched earth. The food was different, it was soft, it was easy to chew, and it smelled incredible. The first step was probably just fire chasing, following wildfires to scavenge the rewards. It was opportunistic, passive. But it was a start. It was the first taste of a new world. The next step was monumental, learning to tend a fire, finding a branch still burning from a wildfire and keeping it alive, feeding it sticks, protecting it from the rain. This was a profound cognitive leap. It requires foresight, it requires planning, it requires cooperation. You can't let the fire go out. It's too valuable. Someone has to be on fire duty. This wasn't just using a thing you found in nature. This was nurturing it, sustaining it. The final step was mastery, learning to make fire on demand. Striking pyrite against flint to create a spark, or rubbing two sticks together with frantic patience. We don't know exactly when this happened, but once it did, we were untethered. We were no longer dependent on the luck of a lightning strike. We held the power in our own hands. We could create light and heat whenever we wanted. The immediate consequences were obvious and immense. First, safety. A campfire is a wall of light and heat in the terrifying dark. Most predators are instinctively afraid of it. They would not approach a well-tended fire. For the first time, the night was not something to be survived. It was ours. The impenetrable darkness was pushed back, and in its place was a circle of safety. Our little group could huddle together protected. The psychological impact of this must have been staggering. The world was suddenly a much less frightening place. Second, warmth. Fire is a portable heater. It allowed us to survive cold nights. It allowed us to push into colder climates. The great migrations out of Africa into Europe and Asia would have been impossible without the warmth of a fire. It was our shield against the ice ages. We were a tropical ape, but with fire, we could make our own little tropics wherever we went. Third, light. The day was no longer bounded by sunrise and sunset. Fire extended the working day. With the light of the flames, you could make tools, mend clothes, or just see the faces of your companions. The night, once a time of fear and inactivity, became a time for industry and, more importantly, for community. These external changes were huge. But the biggest changes were happening inside our bodies. The real revolution was happening in our stomachs and in our heads. Cooking is, in essence, external digestion. When you apply heat to food, you are using the energy of the fire to do the work your body would otherwise have to do. Heat breaks down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars that are easier to absorb. It denatures proteins, unraveling them so our digestive enzymes can get to work more efficiently. It softens tough plant fibers and melts collagen in meat, making them tender and easy to chew. Cooking also neutralizes toxins found in many plants, opening up a whole new menu of edible resources. And it kills bacteria and parasites, making food safer and reducing the burden of disease. What this all means is that cooked food delivers far more energy for far less effort. A chimpanzee in the wild might get about 80% of the caloric value out of a piece of fruit. But for meat or tubers, that number is much lower. They spend most of their day chewing just to break even. A human eating cooked food, however, can absorb close to 100% of the available nutrients. It was like discovering an energy superpower. This new, energy-rich diet had a direct and dramatic effect on our anatomy. We didn't need massive jaws and huge grinding teeth anymore. Our food was soft. Over generations, our faces began to change. Jaws got smaller, teeth got smaller. The heavy muscles that anchored our jaws to our skulls shrank. Our faces became flatter, more like they are today. You can see this transition clearly in the fossil record, but the most important trade-off was happening behind the scenes. It's called the expensive tissue hypothesis. The idea is simple. The body has a limited energy budget. Some organs are very expensive to run. The two most expensive are the digestive tract and the brain. For most animals, there's a trade-off. You can have a big, complex gut to process low-quality food, or you can have a big brain. It's very hard to afford both. When we started cooking our food, we outsourced the hardest part of digestion to the fire. Our gut didn't need to be so long and complex anymore. It could shrink. And as our digestive system became smaller and more efficient, it freed up a massive amount of metabolic energy. That surplus energy had to go somewhere, and it went straight to our heads. The human brain began to grow at an explosive rate. The brain of Homo erectus, the likely first fire user, was already larger than its predecessors. But after the widespread adoption of fire, the cranial capacity of our lineage shot up. It led to the Neanderthals, with brains as larger than our own, and eventually to us, Homo sapiens, with our ridiculously oversized, energy-guzzling brains. Our brain consumes about 20% of our calories when we're at rest, even though it's only 2% of our body weight. No other animal has anything like it. That is a luxury we could only afford because of the caloric subsidy provided by cooked food. Fire was the fuel for our expanding minds. It didn't just warm our bodies, it fed our neurons. It built the very organ that allows us to ponder questions like this one. And with that bigger brain came new abilities. We became better tool makers. The crude choppers of the old Darwin tradition were replaced by the beautifully crafted, symmetrical hand axes of the Acheulean. Making one of these requires planning, skill, and a mental template of the finished product. It requires a more sophisticated mind, but the changes weren't just biological and technological. They were social, they were cultural. The fire became the center of our world. It became the hearth. Before fire, a hominin group might scatter at night, each individual finding a tree or a ledge for safety. There was no central meeting place, but a campfire draws people in. It is a natural focus for a group. After the day's hunting and gathering, everyone would come back to the fire. They would share their food, they would share their warmth, they would share their time. The campfire was the first living room. It was the first theater. It was the first school. Imagine the scene. The darkness is held back by the flickering light. The day's work is done. People are gathered together. What do? They interact. The hunters might recount the story of the day's hunt, acting it out for the others. The gatherers might show the children which berries are safe to eat. Toolmakers could work in the light, with others watching and learning. This intense, close-quarters social environment created a powerful new selective pressure. Success in this new world didn't just depend on being strong or fast. It depended on being able to navigate a complex social world. You had to understand who was your ally, who was your rival, who you could trust. You had to be able to communicate, to persuade, to empathize, to deceive. This is the crucible where language was likely forged. Simple grunts and gestures were no longer enough. Around the campfire, there was a reason to talk. There was time to talk. We needed a way to share the past, remember the hunt last week. We needed a way to plan the future tomorrow. We will go to the river. We needed a way to build our social bonds. He shared his meat with me, so I will help him. Storytelling would have become vital. Stories are how we make sense of the world. They are how we transmit knowledge and values across generations. Stories about the great hunter, the cunning trickster, the creation of the world. All of these would have been told around the dancing flames, binding the small group together into a cohesive cooperative unit. So when we look at the other big turning points, we can see how they are downstream from the control of fire. Bipedalism came first, true. It was the essential prerequisite. It got us on 2 feet and freed our hands. But for millions of years, bipedal apes with free hands didn't do much more than carry things and occasionally bash things with rocks. They existed, and then they vanished. It was fire that gave those free hands something truly transformative to do, to tend the flame, to cook the food that would fuel the brain, which would then figure out how to make ever more complex tools with those hands. Their tools existed before fire, yes. But they were simple, and they stayed simple for a very long time. The great leap in technological complexity, the explosion of new tool types, happens after our brains started to expand. Fire fueled the brain that could imagine a hand axe. And language? Language is the ultimate product of the big brain and the complex social life that fire made possible. It's hard to imagine complex grammar and syntax evolving in a species that scatters at sunset. Language needed the campfire. It needed the audience. It needed the long, dark nights filled with shared stories and shared plans. The control of fire was the spark that ignited the human revolution. It was a singular event that triggered a cascade of feedback loops. Cooking led to more energy. More energy led to a bigger brain and a smaller gut. A bigger brain led to better tools and more complex social structures. More complex social structures centered around the hearth created the need for language. Language allowed us to cooperate and innovate on an unprecedented scale. Each change fed back and amplified the others. It separated us from the animal kingdom in a way nothing else had. Every other animal is trapped by its biology and its environment. It has to find food, it can eat raw, it has to live where the climate allows. It is ruled by the cycle of day and night. With fire, we stepped outside of those rules. We started to shape the environment to suit our needs instead of the other way around. We made our own warmth. We made our own light. We even, in a way, made our own food by transforming inedible things into nutritious meals. We created a new artificial niche for ourselves, the niche of the campfire. From there, everything else becomes possible. Agriculture is, in a sense, a larger scale application of the same principle, manipulating nature to create a reliable food source. Cities are just giant permanent campfires, centers of warmth and light and social connection. Our entire technological civilization is built on the principle of harnessing external energy sources, a principle we first learned by taming a burning branch. Every engine, every power plant, every light bulb is a descendant of that first controlled flame. So yes, standing up was important, making tools was clever, learning to speak was genius. But harnessing fire was the moment we became something new on this planet. It was the moment we stopped being just another creature adapting to the world and started the long, complicated, and often dangerous journey of adapting the world to us. It was the single, decisive step that put us on the path to becoming human.